Welcome to the E-Show with Neil Ravin. With over 1,000 NCAA commitments, the EHL is the proven path to college. Turn it up and learn more about the college placement leader at the Division II and III levels.
Welcome to the E-Show, presented by the Penalty Box Foundation. The Foundation's mission centers around their daily motto: we take care of our own, as they help out all of those within the hockey community who have experienced a catastrophic event. Learn more at penaltyboxfoundation.org. Once again, my name is Neil Ravin. This is episode number 31, and coming on the podcast for the second time, let's welcome in the head coach and GM of the Vermont Lumberjacks, Jim Mosso. Welcome to the E-Show, Jim.
Hey, Neil. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Another Team of the Week feature and bringing in a program that has made a steady climb each and every year. This past season, easily, I'm sure you felt the same way. It was the best EHL team that you've ever had, and the EHLP team also, before the season got canceled, had just knocked off the defending champions. I know you didn't get a chance to finish the season, but do you still look back on this past year as a huge accomplishment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we achieved a lot of different things for the first time in our organization. We spent several weeks number one in the power rankings, which was pretty cool for us. And then, we had 14 confirmed NCAA commitments, and I believe we're going to end up with 3 more here. So most likely we'll have 17 kids playing college hockey come next year, So really that's pretty cool as a program to just kind of get some more wins than the year before and just kind of keep climbing up the ladder and then sending as many kids to school as possible. And that was a really cool thing to watch the majority of the team accomplish this year.
And 17 commits, when you get to that number, obviously that's going to rank second in the league behind the Avalanche's 19. But for you, that's more than the previous 2 years combined. Do you credit that to being an older team? Do you credit that to it being your third year? What do you point it towards?
I would say there's a culmination of a lot of things. A lot of the kids on this team had been here 3 years. The Jordan Bufflins, Logan Descanios, Connor Carbo, the Dodges. We had a lot of 3-year guys that, were with me when I took the program over and kind of earned my way up to the EHL and kind of built the team into what it is today. So there's a really strong group of veteran returners that really understood what the Lumberjacks went through to get here. And I think a lot of those kids, once they understood what we were looking for, and they really helped me attract other kids like them to the program in the last year or two. So it really was a culmination of everyone working together and trying to get the right group of guys in there. And we just had a standout year. So it's kind of a bummer the way it ended because I think we were ready to go in every single way and we wanted to make that push. But also looking back, I think, we're here to move kids to college hockey and that's a huge number of guys that are going to get an opportunity to keep playing. So that's pretty exciting.
And that's going to be the thing that we probably remember the most from the 2019-20 season, or the commitments for every team. I think when we look back, we won't remember who beat who or who got to actually play in the playoffs and who didn't. But for your program, you did get to play in the playoffs. You were in a tight battle with the Avalanche down to the wire, basically, for that 2 seed and a first-round bye. Now, this is going to be kind of a weird question, but you didn't get that first-round bye, which allowed you to play a playoff series against the Seacoast Spartans. Obviously, you won that series. You would have then faced the Avalanche in the next round. Is there a part of you that's happy that you got to play those playoff games?
Yeah, if you think about it like that, if we got the bye, we would have been able to play another game together, So it was, this was, I think I say it every year, but every year just seems to get better and better. This was my favorite group to coach, and this is my favorite year of hockey. And a lot of that, it's really a great 2-year period. A lot of the kids were on the team for both years, but this was just an excellent group. And, to be able to get 2 more games and really kind of put things all together was pretty cool. we got to, we got to practice and put a lot of things in place in those playoff games that we really wanted to instill in kind of our playoff approach. The year before we got knocked out in the second round. So there was things that we were trying to work on behind the scenes and just be ready for, and including just being deeper, and if you look back, you look at our power play guys, they didn't play one shift on the penalty kill, even with the game on the line, the last 2 or 3 minutes left to play in a tight playoff series. We were comfortable with our third and fourth line chewing up those minutes and getting that job done. So I think as a group, we had just come so far as from top to bottom to really play in those big moments that we worked on all year. And I think it kind of showed in that first round. And, I was excited to take that, the momentum and keep going further. But obviously it's a disappointment a little bit, and it hurts a little bit to talk about it here and there. But I was really proud of the way we played and how we did what we did in that first round. And I thought we were totally ready to keep going.
So I know it's depressing, but let's just ask one final question about that, the way it all played out, and then move on, because you just started to bring it up. Every year has been a progression forward, whether it's the wins or the commitments, but you go back to the year when we did get to play things out, and you beat the Rough Riders in the first round, and you lost the Wizards in the second round. And I'm sure it still stings for you, being, I think you were a period away from Providence. You were up going into the third period of Game 3.
Yeah.
So then fast forward to this past year, and we know it's your best team that you've ever had, and you don't get a chance to even have that closure of whether you would have beaten or lost to the Avalanche, and who knows what would have happened if you had made it to Providence. But with all that being said, now you turn the page for this upcoming year, another year where you're the full EHL head coach and GM, of course, overseeing the premier team as well. How early into this upcoming season are you going to tell the story of the 2019-20 and the 2018-19 Lumberjacks and emphasize to this year's group the idea of finishing it off for those guys?
I think that's something that will be established early, and the way that I kind of go about doing that is not necessarily, I can't expect this year's group to be identical to last year's group. We're going to have a young group. We're going to have a really skilled team, a lot of speed, aggressive, but they're young, so they're not, I can't expect them to come in and be Logan Descanio, Jordan Bufflin, and Marini right away off the hop. You know what I mean? So it's going to be totally different, but I think the last 2 years, with Emoff's group and then Descanio's group, they kind of laid the template for success, and I think we take the obstacles that we had to come across and maybe our downfalls from one year to the next and try to prepare to get over that hurdle then with the next group that comes up to it, So I think, we'll establish early the things that we felt helped us succeed and try to put those things in place. And we'll establish early maybe some of the things where we could have been better and try to eliminate those as a teaching tool and use that to just set the tempo of what it's like and what it takes to succeed in this league. It's all the other teams are getting better. The Northern Conference is ridiculously hard, so the goal isn't going to be wins and losses. The goal is going to be how to get our team to play in the manner that the last two groups were able to get to at the end of the season, and I think that they kind of created a roadmap, and we've got to start at A and we've got to go all the way through the letters to get to Z,
Mm-hmm. And I brought that question up because I've almost asked it to every team that was still alive in the postseason, because you go up and down the list, whether it was yourself or the Avalanche, the Rangers, Little Fires, 87s, every team felt like they had a shot, at least to make it there. And then who knows when they got there. But it wasn't just, as I mentioned earlier, for you at the EHL level. Your EHLP team was starting to peak as well. They had just knocked off the defending champion Wolves and was getting set for their second round. And of all the names that you've mentioned so far on this episode of the podcast, the Descanios, the Emofs, the Buffalo Line, they've all spent time in your program developing for a year at the EHLP and then climbing up the ladder. Now, for the 11 teams that have both EHLP and EHL, there's a group of you guys that do it very well. What has been the key to your success in Vermont and having kids come in for a year, develop, and then moving up within your program?
Well, I think, something that we do very seriously is Coach Jack Lowry, who is my right-hand man and, become my best friend. We are a two-man team in every way, and that's, in terms of recruiting, me and him, whether we're recruiting a player to come in to be the top of the EHL team, or we're recruiting kids to come in to the premier team that we see have the potential to come through the program and make the EHL team. We do all of that stuff together, and I am very hands-on recruiting with premier players, just like Jack is very hands-on recruiting with EHL players. And I think we identify EHL players that just maybe have 1 or 2 years that they need to develop to get there, so we kind of just look at it like that. And once we start with a training camp where the 50 players get here, and, during training camp, they have to earn their way into the locker rooms. And then, we split the premier players that are excelling, also do 2-a-days. They practice with the EHL team. And, when they're practicing with the EHL team, they have an opportunity to earn a spot in the lineup that weekend, and a perfect example was Frank Mundy this year started with Premier, and, he got called up for a couple of games and did really well, and he stayed and never went back down to Premier, I think there was probably 6 or 7 different kids on the Premier group that got a chance they earned a chance to get called up and play in the EHL this year. Some played 1 or 2, some played 10, so I think we really focus on, when we bring guys in that we actually believe in. We don't bring guys in for the mindset of 1 year and go somewhere else. And I think over the course of the season, they really feel that, and they're getting hands-on quality coaching from both of our staff members. And it really just gives them the tools they need to keep going. The other thing I would say is, if you didn't know our players, and you just showed up to the rink at any given day, whether it be the middle of the week or a game, the two teams, they live together, they're intermingled, the kids do double days together, they wear the same attire, they have the same rules, the same systems as the EHL team, so if you were to walk into our rink and not know who anybody was, you wouldn't be able to figure out who was an EHL player or a Premier player just by walking in there, So it's really, as much as we can possibly do at one cohesive unit, and the younger guys learn from the older guys, and the older guys, they're responsible for helping the younger guys get to where they are, So I think we really take that to heart very much here.
And I'm glad you said that, because it's something that I've noticed as well. Look no further than your jersey numbers, right? It's something that a few more teams have started to adopt because you've done it. You guys don't repeat numbers, meaning that you have a number 7 on the EHL team and a number 7 on the EHLP team. If an EHLP player or younger in your organization wants to earn, I know it's just a number, but they want to earn their favorite number, they got to go out and they got to earn it. So, when it comes to your program, I've always...
That's actually a cool story how that developed, because it was somewhat intentional for that. But in the way that we did it was, a few years ago, we actually had an EHL team, a Premier team. We had a split season U16 team and a split season U15 team, right? So we ordered jerseys 1 through 98. And at the time, 1 through 25 was allotted to EHL players, 26 through 50 was allotted to premier players, 51 through 75 16s, and 75 through 98 was U16, right? So once a player came into the program and they were given a number, as they moved up in the team, they kept their number, right? So 3-4 years later, you're actually seeing players like Egan Schmidt was on that U16 team at the time wearing 82. You know, he moved up, he played in the Premier, he kept 82 playing Premier. He moved up again playing with EHL, he's wearing 82, right? So back then, you know, it was all low numbers were EHL and all high numbers were young players, but we've had so much development and upper move it through the program that now there's a lot of high numbers on the EHL team, you know? So it's just, it's kind of really cool if you look at it that way to look at just the numbers alone on the ice and figure out how many years or how far these kids have moved up within our program.
And these kids aren't moving up just within your program either. They're going off to college as well. And you're
Right.
proud of every single one of these kids that commits, whether it's a kid that comes in, just does EHL and goes, or climbs the ladder like some of these kids have. But when you see an EMOF or a Buff Line climb up and then they go all the way to, you know, Manhattanville for EMOF or UNE for Buff Line, high-end Division III schools, does that make you feel, you know, a little extra sense of proud?
Well, absolutely. You know, and I think, you know, I think that really goes to show that the Vermont Lumberjacks offer the right tools to both develop and then get exposure and be taught the right things to succeed in college hockey, you know, and Jordan Bufflin, for instance, you know, he came to the Vermont Lumberjacks right out of high school. And if you have a conversation, he'll laugh about it because he was finishing his high school hockey season in New York and we were the only team talking to him, you know? So he was like, okay, well, the Lumberjacks sound cool. I guess I'll go there. And next thing you know, he's second in the league in points in the EHL with his line mate, Logan. And he's off to a national ranked top 10 program playing college hockey. He's probably going to compete for a national championship at the college level, you know? So when you look at stuff like that, and like I said, you know, the culmination of this year's group, there was a lot of 3-year players who had bought into the Lumberjacks as an organization, who bought into me as a coach from day one. And they played their entire junior career with us, and they're having, you know, major successful results going to college hockey, you know? So I take a lot of pride in our organization. Like that's what we care about more than anything.
And I'm not going to put you on the spot to have you pick one that you're more proud of than the next, because I'm going to pick it for you right now, because there was a story this past year that I made some social media posts about, but we didn't talk enough about it. You had a player in Connor Carbo come into your program, spend 2 years with you when you were the premier coach, and then spend, I guess you call it a year and a half at the EHL, because he went to Wentworth halfway through this past year. He starts off at Wentworth, okay, 500, and then, you know, in typical goalie fashion, right, he just gets hotter than hell in the playoffs, and the numbers that he put up in the playoffs were just astounding. First, he knocks off Curry with a 51 save performance, 51, like out of this world. Then beats UNE with 26 more saves and gave Endicott everything they could handle in the CCC championship with 47 saves after that. Like I said, I made a few social media posts, but for a player like that to begin in your program with your premier team, spend not 1 but 2 years there, then come up with you to the EHL team, and then, you know, halfway through the year has to make that tough decision where a school wants him to go right then and there, and he chooses it, and then he goes out and has this crazy success in March. How did that make you feel?
Well, that's a really cool story, and you know, something that I think a lot of people don't know is one of those underdog stories that ends up working out. You know, and we have a few players, you know, in terms of being proud of different commits and different stories. I'll just give you a quick, you know, synopsis of a couple of those. But Connor Carbo, you know, in the beginning of the season this year, not one college coach wanted to talk to him.
It's amazing.
You know, so Wentworth called me and said, hey, you know, our starter left. This is what's happening. We're looking for a goalie that can come and compete. And Connor actually played 5 years with the Vermont Lumberjack organization. So I was really able to give a full description of what I saw in terms of who Connor Carbo was and what he is capable of doing. And they took him based on, just that relationship I have with Jay and just, the word of kind of what we talked about. And he got an opportunity and he was totally lights out. I think even if you look at Logan Descanio, he had come into the league a few years ago, and a couple coaches had cut him, and didn't think he belonged in the EHL at all. And he had to fight to get an all-star spot this year, and then ends up just kind of proving to everybody what he's capable of, and I think Emoff with a similar story. And I think Glenn Robitaille's got a similar story. We kind of have just had some kids come to our program that had a lot of talent, but weren't necessarily given the opportunities they felt they deserved, and they had a chip on their shoulder, and they just dug down and just turned it into something awesome, and I think those stories are pretty cool. And I think our program, in terms of how we recruit and what kids hear about what we're doing here or what the league can be about, I think those are stories that, a lot of different people can relate to. And, the proof is right there on paper of what can happen with a little bit of hard work and a coach and a program that believes in you.
Descanio had 91 points this last year, and MVP season. It's just
and he, he's a kid that has been looked down upon his whole entire career. You know what I mean? So I think when you go through years of coaches not feeling like, you're their fit, and then you get to just kind of do something like that, it speaks for itself, and I think there's a lot of coaches that now would love to have him, you know what I mean? So I think that's really cool to, that's something that puts a big smile on my face.
And you use the word underdog. I've kind of thought of that before when it comes to your program. Do you think that's at all because of your location and the fact that you're a bus trip to everyone? Does it make it harder for your recruiting?
Well, I think we certainly have obstacles in recruiting, you know what I mean? In that the Vermont youth hockey isn't as strong as the youth hockey in Massachusetts and New Hampshire right now, and we're trying to help build that to get that back where it should be. But, we don't necessarily have a lot of locals to pick from. So we have to travel and find the majority of our players outside of Vermont and convince them that coming to Vermont is the best bet, but I think we've had most of our success recruiting based on word of mouth of the players that have come here and had success and enjoyed their experience. And then, they have a buddy back home that went somewhere and didn't love it, but, is interested in looking for a new home, and they're the right personality and character fit for us. We do a lot of our recruiting based off player suggestions, and we look there first. And I think between me and Jack, we've kind of figured out what our niche is and, what is attractive about us. And we figured out how to get the kids that we really want. We don't have to cast as big of a net anymore as we did when I first got here. And when I first got here, I basically felt like I was begging kids to play here, and now for the first time, we have kids call us and that really want to be a part of the Lumberjacks, and I think that speaks to what we've accomplished as a team, but also what our league is accomplishing and getting better every year. And, surpassing other leagues that used to be our competition has just kind of made all those things work for us.
And it's all great to hear. And speaking of word of mouth, it's going to sound like I'm going to start getting political here with this next question, but I'm not, first off. And I've had a number of people ask me what the league would say or do if we have a national anthem this year and a player takes a knee. I don't know what I would do, was what I would say. I said to each person that's asked that question. But I found myself one time saying, I know one team in particular that probably won't take a knee, but for what it's worth, they're going to hold perfectly still up until the last beat is complete in the national anthem. Now, if no one has seen that before, I suggest they watch your team do that. You guys stand perfectly still. Don't move the feet. Don't sway back and forth. You just stand perfectly still up until the national anthem is 100% finished. Was that something that you brought to the program as something that has been there for a while? Can you take us through that?
That's something that actually Coach Doc also was a big proponent of. Both of us had that philosophy. I think for us, the national anthem for us kind of serves two purposes. One, the first thing we teach here is respect. And to us, the national anthem represents, the people that have fought for our country and sacrificed their lives, and to give us this opportunity to play hockey as, for me, a job, and for the kids as a way to get into college and become who they're going to be, and then the second part of it is, the first drill, we get on the ice in the first practice and we teach the national anthem before we do anything with a puck. And I think that's to set the table, that small details matter. And I personally believe that, if you can, you have to learn how to handle small tasks to be able to complete big tasks, and I think we use the anthem as the great starting point to accomplish that. What I'm going to say with my group is, to us, the national anthem represents this. I would like us as a team to do that. And if there are some players that really want to make a statement or have an issue with something, to come to me. And as a team, I would like to respect what they want to accomplish and find a way as a group to help make a difference in something, and it can be many different ways, but I'm all for respecting people's opinions and what they, things that they see an injustice somewhere and want to make a change. There's tons of ways to make a change, and I think I'm totally on board with that. And I know the group of people that we're bringing in, the group of kids that we're bringing in, would love to do something to make a difference in their community as well, so I'm all for that. It won't happen during the national anthem with the Lumberjacks, but, we're all for finding different ways to make the world around us a little bit better.
And for your team coming up this fall, as we mentioned a few times on this podcast, you're moving so many kids on to college, but can you tell us about maybe a few returners that you are bringing back who you're going to lean on pretty heavily to lead your team?
Yeah, I think the first is the obvious is David Raduzzi. I felt like last year he was, in quote unquote, a rookie in terms of junior hockey. I think he went on a stretch there in the first half to middle of the season where I do feel he was the best goalie in the league during that stretch. Unfortunately, I think he kind of had to battle a little bit of Carbo was an age out, and Dylan Whalen was an age out. So they, needed to play enough to get to school. And obviously Carbo had a great story and stuff. So David kind of had to just sit back and take the games that were coming to him. And I think he wasn't able to necessarily showcase everything he's made of. And I think he did pretty well considering most of his games were, against the Avalanche, the 87s, the Rangers, the Seahawks. Most of his games were against the top-rated teams in the league. So to have the stats he had was pretty incredible. We have some guys coming back, and Dylan Infantino and Frank Mundy, and Frank has been here a little bit, and Mac Brown has been here a couple of years now. So we have, I think, 5 Nico Hemming EHL veterans coming back that were directly a part of that group and understand how we have to operate on a day-to-day basis to achieve our success. But we have a bunch of kids moving up. Colby Anton is a phenomenal hockey player. Nick Speckhart has been with us a while. Aaron Derman's been with us a while. You got Tyler Penry, who's moving up. So we have kids that we're confident that not only are they going to be able to move up, but they're going to be able to take significant roles right away. And I think so we have enough returners in-house to maintain the culture and the environment that we need to breed success. And I think that's kind of the best, what we've been known for as the Lumberjacks is we don't always necessarily start strong, but we start with a locker room that's made up of the same group of kids that we're going to finish with. So one way or the other, those kids in there, they're going to fight it out and they're going to figure it out. So if we have the right culture, the right work ethic and practice and the right ideas and systems and stuff like that, they will get there. It could be a little bit of a bumpier road than maybe the last two veteran-minded teams have been. But, this team has all the tools, talent, and skill to be as good as last year's group was, So I'm really excited about that kind of, fresh start in the new transition.
And I was curious what name you would say first. I thought it was probably going to be Raduzzi, and you mentioned the hot stretch that he had there early on. And one thing that was kind of interesting for him is in selecting the all-star teams, you can make the case that our three best all-stars were Descanio, Marini, and Doney. And Raduzzi probably could have been there as well, but for those three that were there, as I mentioned, they played as well as anybody on our all-star team. And then when they got back to your program, their games hit different levels. Do you think that was a credit for them seeing what the college hockey level was like, and then coming back to the EHL, which is obviously not the same caliber? Or what do you put credit towards for that?
Yeah, I would say that was a huge learning experience for those guys. I have to give it here because Jordan Bufflin,
another guy,
showed that he belongs there. Like it was a mistake that he wasn't there. I'm kind of bummed for him, but so I'm gonna have to have his back on this one and give him a shout out. He should have been there as well, and I think it would have been even more exciting. But no, I think the All-Star series and visiting those schools and the competition, and Logan Descanio got to score a college goal. He's not even in college yet, so he certainly has the confidence to go to college and already feels like he's got a little bit of a monkey off his back, but I think, that was just such an incredible experience that the league decided to do for our players. And they came back and showed the locker room what the expectations were in terms of preparing and succeeding at that level, So we really amped up just our mindset as a team when those kids got back.
And I'm glad that you mentioned Buffalo too, because you could have had 5 all-stars. Last year's Lumberjacks team was that good. And you mentioned Descanio again. I think he sent me a thank you text for the All-Star week when he was still in the car ride home. And that meant a lot just because of the work that goes into that week. And then to go out and nearly beat Fitchburg State and then beat Salem State. It was really a special time for our league. And I hope we can have that again this year, because obviously it's a weird time right now. If the colleges do get the chance to play us, I know how beneficial it is for not only our players, but for our coaches. And you're lined up to be one of the coaches. So my fingers are crossed for you to get to experience it for the first time as well.
Yeah, that would be really cool. I would be really excited to step in that building at Fitchburg State and being on the opposite bench of what I played at when I was there, So yeah, no, I think when those players came back, they felt that was probably the best experience they had in their life total. You know what I mean? So for them to make a comment like that was awesome. And, and just getting to know some of the other coaches that we compete against all the time. And, some of these, based on the way hockey kind of takes over your life, some of the coaches that, we compete against, those are my best friends, so you get to see Chris Sorella and Bill Zanaboni and, Adam Hooley. And, I share a little bit about some of the stories we have together as coaches and stuff. And, those kids get to go be on their bench for a week. It's a really cool thing for them to get to experience a little bit about, what kind of where I come from too. I played for Chris Sorella, and some of my players got to see what it's like to be on his bench for a week. So It's just a really cool story all the way around.
And I'm just hopeful for you. It's not even just you. I mean, it was the all-star staff is supposed to be Sorella and Rich DiCaprio, and then for the first time, you and Adam Hooley. And I really hope for you and Adam's case, you'll get the chance to do it this year. And if it's not this year, maybe it's next year. But it's all a great transition into the final question that I did give you a heads up on because of so much recent success. I didn't want you to get on this podcast and totally not know where to go, but we touched on the Frozen Finals. We talked about Providence a lot. So let's set up the hypothetical situation that the Vermont Lumberjacks are in Providence against all these other teams that are in this same scenario, and you're heading into overtime, and you can pick between all the players that you've coached during your time with the Lumberjacks. So going back to when you were the back-to-back EHLP Coach of the Year, until this past 2 years, you've been the EHL coach. So let's get that all-time Vermont lineup with 3 forwards, 2 D, and a goalie that you'd send out there.
All right. Well, I got 2 different philosophies here. That might change the answer a little bit, but I think the first 2 are just plainly obvious in Jordan Bufflin and Logan Descanio. Basically set records for both our program in the league of, the points they had acquired and stuff. And, those guys could get the job done when the game was on the line every single time, so I couldn't go without those 2. The interesting thing I would say is, are these players, am I talking about where they are now in college, or am I talking about them in the peak of their junior career? Because I would say Mason Emoff was unbelievable. I think Glenn Robitaille was unbelievable. I think Mason was a hair better at the end of his junior career. And I think Glenn is a hair better than Mason in his freshman year at Manhattanville. So I guess I don't know what the, protocol is there. So I would say Mason Emoff with a Glenn Robitaille special mention, depending on the rules of the fantasy league. And then defense, Corey Doney is just lights out. And then a kid that I don't know if a lot of people will remember, but one of the kids we had in our very beginning of our program, which I got to coach, was Marcus Comols, and he ended up going to the NA after the 2 years he spent with us, and then he's playing Division I college hockey at Anchorage, Alaska. So, he was a stud. He was a righty, and Doney's a lefty, and it's just perfect stick combinations there too. In terms of goalie, I would say I'm somewhat split between Carbo and Raduzzi. What I would say is, when Carbo came back from college, he was ready to go in playoffs for us this year. And I've never seen a kid more zoned in. He went the week leading up to that series against the Avalanche. Out of the 4 practices we had, 2 of them, not one puck went in his net from start to finish the entire practice. He was totally ready to go. And he was just seeing pucks before they came. He'd been playing, seeing college shots for a while. And then Raduzzi, I think, was lights out in a different part of the season. So I would say Carbo, based on what he had accomplished so far in juniors. But if you're to ask me this question in 12 months from now, I would have a strong idea that Raduzzi might be the answer, given his senior year of junior hockey.
Well, I like the way you put the lineup together. It's a lineup that could compete with anyone that I've heard throughout these Team of the Week features that we've done all summer. So it's a credit to what you've done with that program. As I mentioned, it's a program that's developing kids all the way through from the EHLP to the EHL, and they did the same for yourself. You were the 2-time back-to-back EHLP Coach of the Year, the first 2 years of the EHLP. So a lot to be proud of, Jim, and a lot to look forward to as well. I know it was kind of a depressing way that this past season ended, but if I had to I would bet that the Vermont Lumberjacks continue to climb up here this upcoming year. So thank you for coming back on the podcast, and I hope that you can enjoy the rest of the offseason.
All right, sounds good. I appreciate that a lot, Neil. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to The E-Show. Learn more at easternhockeyleague.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, be sure to subscribe and get notified when next week's podcast is released.